this video, I'll be sharing with you how we can use exam stress to improve our GCSE or A-level grades rather than reduce them. I'm going to share with you how stress affects performance and share a simple model from psychologists that illustrates this really well. I'll also be thinking about how you can tell whether your teen is overwhelmed versus just unmotivated, because both these things can look the same from the outside. I'll be sharing some practical tips for managing stress, as well as some common mistakes that I've seen over the last 5 years that can hopefully help you and your teen to avoid them and do better as a result. So if we haven't met before, my name is Rachel Stewart. I'm a Cambridge University qualified academic coach, and I work with GCSE and A-level students to improve their results by 1 to 3 grades across the board by building their executive function skills. Because once we build those, we can learn how to learn anything and improve our results across all subjects. So, understanding stress versus performance. On this graph, we have the y-axis, which shows performance, high versus low, and along the bottom, along the x-axis, we have pressure. So low, moderate, high, very high pressure. How these things interact is not how you might think. It's not a straight line, it's actually a bell curve. So this is the Yerkes-Dodson human stress performance curve that they established a long time ago, that is very well accepted news today, that really shows that when we have very low stress or pressure, we're actually in boredom. And we need some stress and pressure to get us going, right? We want some. The best answer is not zero for stress or pressure. We want some to get us going. So our sort of ideal zone is to be in either comfort, or for really optimal performance, we want to be in stretch. We want to kind of be over here in stretch. But then at that point of peak performance, what then starts to happen is we move over here to strain and burnout. And when we're in these zones, our performance goes down. So it's not a direct line that more pressure is actually a good thing. More pressure is a good thing to a point, and then it actually has a negative impact on our performance. Another way of thinking about this might be that up till about here, okay, so from this section here versus this point here, okay, this part is often called eustress. And that is helpful stress. That's the stress we need to get us going, to turn Netflix off, to turn our mobile phones off. But when we're over at this point here, it starts to become distress. And that's really unhelpful and actually sends our performance down. So we want to manage our stress and performance so that we can use it in a helpful way, but not so much that it's actually negative. Overwhelmed versus unmotivated. So this is something that I hear from parents a lot, is that my teen is unmotivated. And I would agree that that is a big problem. I would say probably about at least 50 to 60% of the teens that come and work with me will say to me, I really struggle with motivation. It's really common, something I hear lots. However, especially as we get closer to exams or points of pressure, overwhelm and being unmotivated can start to look the same. Let me show you on the graph. So if we're over here, you would say at this point that we are kind of unmotivated. But that actually is roughly the same point as here when we're in strain and burnout. So both those points can look the same when it comes to our performance, but the underlying cause is very different. Now, I'm recording this video in May, and I want to tell you about a teen that I spoke to on a coaching call recently who said to me, oh, I just wish I was more stressed, because if I was more stressed, I'd do more work. I'm just not doing the work that I want to be doing. I need a bit more stress in my life. And what actually happened shortly after that call, when she stayed on after the recording and we had a chat in a smaller group, was she actually got very emotional and started to cry. And what I could tell is that that teen just didn't maybe have the self-awareness that they needed to realize that actually they were very stressed. They had actually moved well past this point and they were incredibly stressed. So the approach and the strategies we would use is obviously very different when you're incredibly stressed to when you're really struggling with motivation and you just can't get going. So that can be a helpful thing. I would also say as well, most teens in my experience do have the self-awareness to know where they are in this curve. But when it gets, to stressful points, sometimes teens can struggle with that. And that's why it's helpful as a parent to be aware of. So where do you think your teen is right now? One helpful thing to ask them is just, what do they think? Where do they think they are? Share with them this video, explain to them what this curve looks like, and just ask them, where would you roughly point yourself on this curve today? Where would you plot yourself? And that will give you a really good feel for where they're at. The other thing that's useful to ask them is, where are they heading? So for example, you may have a teen that says that they are kind of here, like they're at the peak of stretch, on the cusp of being strained, but they might tell you that actually they're moving this way. And that, of course, is something that you want to be very mindful of, particularly around mock and exam seasons. Also, if I have a teen that says to me they're here and they're moving this way, which of course does happen naturally when you get to points of high pressure, we want to be really aware and manage that, because obviously, where are they going to head? They're going to head to burnout, and that is really bad for their performance. It's going to send it down rather than up. So what can happen at high stress? And this is something else I want to make you aware of from the Yerkes-Dodson's insight. What they call this point is the zone of delusion. So when we're in strain or when we're in burnout, we get into often what's called the zone of delusion. And that is, I can't possibly take breaks. I can't stop. I need to keep going. I've got so much to do. Can you stop talking to me? I don't have time for this. I need to get going, going, going. Because we're so stressed and burnt out and strained, we just can't see the wood for the trees. And that is a really bad thing for our performance, because we're often just don't have the headspace to think, what is the next right thing, and to actually focus on it. So we want to be very mindful about stress and burnout, and that we don't head into this zone of delusion. We want to catch things before we get there. So how can we reduce our stress levels? We can reduce them by taking breaks, exercise, sleep, thought, and joy. They would be my main 5, and I'll talk to you about the common mistakes I see around those and how we can avoid them. So first of all, over planning. Particularly when we get to study leave or the exam period from May to June onwards, but also before that, if teens pull together a study plan on their own, even if it's maybe a teen that typically didn't do a lot of work before, there's a tendency for them to massively over plan, and also over plan in the holidays. So one of the things I would really say on this is we need a full day off every week. That's my big recommendation, even during exam period, because exam period is generally at least 6 weeks. And I don't think any one of us as parents could sit here and think that we could go to work every day for 6 weeks, have continual interviews effectively. That's what like an exam feels like. You're constantly under scrutiny and under pressure almost every day of the week for 6 weeks, and not take time off and honestly believe that we're going to perform at our best. So this is a controversial one, but I'd say sometimes you need to do less to be more productive overall. And also, we don't want to go into an exam highly stressed and then have like a freeze or a blackout or end up in tears in an exam because we're too stressed. So yeah, really important point, take breaks. A short break every hour as well is also really helpful. Teens will often plan in the holidays or in study leave, I'm going to study all day, right? This is a big mistake I see. And I also see parents producing study plans or making study plans sometimes for their teens where they're like, yeah, they're starting to study at 9 o'clock in the morning and they're not going to finish until 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. That's like a working day. That should be absolutely fine. Well, there's 2 things that are going to happen with that. You're either going to be not very productive because you're going to kind of graze at your studying all day, or if you are really productive, you are going to burn out very quickly working at such high intensity for such long periods over, sort of weeks on end. So I would say time block, try and put your study quite close together with breaks in between. If we can, front load our study, so study at the beginning of the day and then try and be finished. If we're starting, by 9 or 10, try and sort of be finished ideally, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, so that actually we've got a sort of shorter day, but then we can have a decent amount of time to go and do things that bring us joy and bring us fun. Not enough sleep and exercise. I'm not going to say too much on this. I've made other content that's talked a lot about this. These are basics, but if we want to do well at exams, we want to be brilliant at basics. especially not getting enough sleep. Huge problem. We want to make sure we sort that out. No rewards or fun. I would much rather see a teen with a plan that they're going to start studying at 9 o'clock in the morning and be finished by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then go and do something fun that brings them joy with their friends, but that they've actually got the work done effectively in the morning. They've done high quality work, they've been answering questions, they've been doing past exam papers, they've really tried hard and done some, it's not just about quantity of work, it's the quality of the work. So they've done good quality work. They've sort of seen it as like HIT training. So you go in, you're super focused, your phone's nowhere to be seen, you get it all done, and then you relax and take the time off. Rather than these plans where you're sort of studying all day, or even worse, studying all day and then again in the evening, and then not having that time for joy or fun. And then lastly, negative self-talk. Really, really important at this time. Not going to talk too much about this other than give a quick tip on this one to say affirmations can be super helpful. So I can, I will, watch me. That can be a lovely affirmation. And another example is a student who aces their exams looks like me. So we want to really reverse that negative self-talk and start to back ourselves, believe in ourselves in order to achieve our full potential. So the last thing just to say on this one is, where are you as a parent? Exam periods are so stressful, not just for our teens, but often for parents. I know many parents right now, as we're in May, who are just as excited, if not more, about their teen finishing exams as they are. So I would love you to have a think about, where are you as a parent? And also, how is potentially your stress impacting your teen? Is there something you need to become self-aware of and think about that? Is there something when we're thinking about breaks and joy that actually it might be nice to organise some time to spend with your teen, just purely for the joy of doing it, to book, to go to the cinema, even if it's just to go out on a dog walk, or maybe it's to go and play tennis if you enjoy doing that together, or whatever it might look like. It doesn't need to be expensive, but thinking about what are the things that you do that bring you joy, because I'm very aware that exams can dominate the whole family and the whole household, and actually some of that relationship and connection can get lost. We've only got a few more years with our teens when they're at this stage, so we don't want to lose that. So yeah, have a think about where you are as a parent, how perhaps you could impact your teen positively or negatively, and also things that might help you guys to reconnect if that's helpful. And even if you don't need to reconnect, just to show your teen you are there, you're supportive, and have a chat that is not just dominated about revision.